Hey, welcome to Dave's Guitar Channel. Well, we're a few days away from Christmas time. It's Saturday night, and my gig got canceled because of the road conditions, and I think mainly like the back stairs to this place. You have to climb stairs to get your gear into the place, and it's all frozen over. And I'm sure they don't want any accidents there. So we are off tonight, and I figured I would do a video. Somebody had a question about numbered charts, the Nashville Number Chart system. So today I thought would be a great day to sit and talk about that for a little bit. So real quickly, a little bit about myself. I'm pretty much self-taught. I did take some lessons when I first started playing on guitar, and then I took lessons from a guy like around 1990 when I was 22. But as far as musical theory and all that stuff, I'm completely self-taught. And when I first started learning music and theory, I didn't like it because I was like, I thought it was made to be more confusing than it was. And I hated the way they taught it. So I came up with this system where I had a number system that I worked out. And I basically thought of music solely in numbers. And I remember thinking like, oh man, I have this system and it's so great. And, kept it in my back pocket. Didn't really talk to anybody about it. And then one time I was in Los Angeles and someone said to me, hey, can you read a Nashville chart? And I'm like, I think so. What is it? And boom, I look at it and I'm like, here I am thinking I made the thing up. And I guess one of the Jordanaires beat me to it. I think his name was like Neil Matthews, and he was one of the Jordanaires that came up with the Nashville number system. So the thing is, it's really simple. You're basically numbering everything in the scale. So let's just take the key of C since it's easy. There's no sharps and no flats. If a progression goes, a bar of C, a bar of A minor, a bar of F, and a bar of G, you'll just see 4 letters on that row. And the 4 letters will indicate 4 bars. So it would say 1, 6 minus 4, 5. And the 6 with the minus sign would be your indicator that you're playing minor. Now, the thing that was a little different from the system that I had kind of come up with on my own was I would automatically assume 6 was minor. And for reasons that make a lot of sense, in the Nashville system, everything's just assumed major. Basically because it's easier to notate when something's minor with a minus sign than coming up with a new symbol to erase that sign and make it major. So I totally understand why they did that, and it works. So basically, if there's any chord that is minor, it's going to have the minus sign. Doesn't matter what position it's in. If it's the 3 chord, yes, we all know the 3 is minor in a typical major scale. However, in the Nashville number charts, we assume it's major unless we see that minus sign. If there's a chord that's going to be out of the key, let's say for a second you're playing in a song and technically the song jumps keys, it goes to the progression, in this particular, let's say it goes to a bridge, and the bridge is playing a C, B flat, F for the bridge. For that, you would see it as being 1, 7 flat, 4. You would just continue with the way it goes, unless there's a key change, which you wouldn't see. So then there gets into stuff with notation. So we can take a little bit of a look at that as well. So the notation, and there's no real standard. There's kind of like a standard that people follow. But I remember seeing a few different Nashville charts, and every time I'm always like, okay. Like for instance, if they want you to strum a donut, like if they just want you to hold it out for the bar, the chord. And the reason why I call them a donut is because if you look at a whole note, it's a donut. So, and that's not me. That's I learned that from Lee Carreri years ago. He'd be like, just give me donuts. I'm like, no. But yeah, that's what he used to say. So if you want to play that, you would see either the diamond around the number, or you would see the diamond above the number. So let's just say you have everything so far is under the assumption that if there's one letter, that's a bar. So if there's just one letter with nothing on it, it's a bar. If it's a letter, if it's two letters and they want to be in the same bar, you'll see it underlined. If there's no other notation, we assume that the first chord gets 2 beats, the second chord gets the other 2 beats. Otherwise, let's say if it says the first chord gets 3 beats and the second chord gets 1 beat, you would see above it 3 little, like a Roman numeral 3 above the letter, and then a 1 over the one that gets the 1 count. If there's a push or an anticipation on the second chord, let's say it comes in on 2 and instead of on 3, you would then have a greater than sign. Again, because no one really writes out a standard chart, sometimes people write an arrow up or an arrow down, depending if it's a anticipation or a hesitation, or simply a push instead of... Most of the time, if they'll call it a push, very rarely do you hear people talk about hesitations, but they never use the word anticipation. They just say push. So if the second chord's on a push, then you would see that greater than sign there. I think, for me, I would write a less than if I wanted it on 3 and. If you want it on 3, there'll be nothing. So there's that type of thing. There's also some rhythmic notation you can put on top of it as well. If you want the bar to repeat, there's like a percentage sign next to the bar. You just write, it would be the same. It would just be a percentage sign. Depending, it would just repeat back to the last bar. What else is there? Depending. So most of the time, in music, you write 4 bars and then go to the next line. In number charts, because you're taking up almost no room, you'll sometimes see people dot between each 4. So let's say you took a song like Living Thing by ELO. So if we were to look at it in a number chart, we would see the first 2 bars would be a C. Then we would see the second 2 bars be an A minor. So this would be written as 1, 1, 6 minus, 6 minus. The next 2 bars are A flat. So we see So we see 6 flat twice, and then the next 2 bars are 4 minus. You'll notice that between the 2, there's a dot centered, and that's just to tell you that there's the end, a breakup of 4 bars, so it's easier to read. And so that kind of thing goes on. People will notate sometimes. They'll put like a V for verse, C for chorus in the beginning of the line to kind of help you let you know, so you can see the form of the song. It's relatively easy. I mean, I've read so many different chord charts. It's funny, when I first started playing, people were like, "Can you read charts?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then, sometimes it looks like someone scribbled on the back of a notebook, and then sometimes it's real pristine and nice. But there's almost no standard. There's more of a standard in that way of notating. But when it comes to numbered charts, it's whatever the person who's writing it likes to see. But for the most part, that's how it's done. And it's very helpful. It also kind of helps you understand chords and naming chords. Because as a player, if you're doing a session, it was funny. I did a gig 2 weeks ago or last week. And a guy says to me, we're talking about chords, and he asked me what I would call, so in the song Peg, we have a C major 7 to a G add 9. And he asked me how I looked at that chord when the B was in the bass on the first pass. And I said, well, to me, it's still a G add 9 over B. And he was like, no, it's a B minor 7 augmented. And I was like, yeah, you can call it that, but now you're taking away from what really is going on here. It's not really being played by the other instruments that way. And I just thought it was like, it's very telling of someone that doesn't really communicate well with other players, because that's not trying to be communicating, that's trying to be hyper correct, because the B is the bass note. But it doesn't help the song if you're playing C major 7 to G add 9, and then you play C major 7 to G add 9, but you're changing the bass to a B, and you see that it's a G add 9 over B. You don't really have to think. If you're soloing or playing, it's still the same. It's just the bass has changed. When you say, I'm playing C major 7 to G add 9, or C major 7 to B minor 7 augmented, you're forcing the person to think. You're forcing them to pull themselves out of what they're doing. And when you're playing a session and stuff, and you're reading stuff in real time, you want it to be, as a producer, I mean, you're being charged. You know, you get paid, let's just say at the particular session is you're getting paid X amount, and you have to get it done for, let's say it's for a film or whatever. So you have a budget, and you've given the budget, and whatever you don't spend on the budget is yours to keep, and the rest is... So in that respect of that, doing that type of work, everything, time is money. The studio's costing you money. So if you got to do something 3 or 4 times because you want to be hyper correct and write the chord out as a B minor 7 augmented, be my guest. But in reality, it's just a G add 9 over B, and it makes it, you can get things done a lot quicker. You don't have to think. And it's all about communication. And that's kind of like when you start writing charts, and I recommend to anybody that wants to either get involved in playing, although that somewhat is a very tough thing to get into now, because, I mean, even the guys who are great at it won't do it anymore. But doing sessions, if you want to just do something just to educate yourself, or to even just feel like you want to be more schooled on it, you can actually... write out charts to songs. Here, listen to a song and write out the chart and practice it. You'll see that you'll find ways to write out chords. You know, because if I was writing peg out, and I'll show you the difference. So this is what peg looks like the way I describe it. And then here's peg in a number chart the way I describe it. And now here's peg the way he described it in chords. And here's the way it is in numbers. And so when just looking at it, you have to think. If it takes you out of the playing, don't do it. Come up with a way to communicate so it's a much clearer thing going on. You know, it's, you know, you could look at like, if we look at country music, right, we can look at the way a G chord, everyone plays the G chord like a G with no third. Now, some people will play it with the B still in the chord. I don't, because I need that to noodle around. In fact, let me show you what I mean. Okay, now I have the acoustic here. So if we look at like typical country, or even rock playing for the most part, they play the G like this. The reason being is also because I've been now able to go. So what I did there was I then went to the C, and I played the C the same way, which becomes a C add 9. I could also look at it as a G5 over C. G5, G5 over C, E minor 7, D sus to D. So when you have all these songs like, you know, and what happens, you see them on pieces of paper when you go look them up online or something. You'll see it as G. You'll see it as like if we took it, you'd see this. and you see it written out in the folksy way, the folksy chords. But those chords aren't being played. If you listen to records, they're playing more G's, like, you know, like when you hear, what's that song? Well, I was in my early 40s. You know, it's the same. It's like, I went skydiving, I went Rocky Mountain climbing, I did 2.7 seconds on a bullet Fu Manchu, right? So you have all that. And then you have the deeper and spoke sweeter, which is a dominant major the 3 chord, but dominant because it wants you to resolve to the E minor. However, that's getting a little too advanced. But anyway, so let's go here and take another one, and you could look at a song like, you know, I still feel 25, G5, most of the time. I still raise a little game with the boys. So there's like a simpler way to communicate that. Now, once you start kind of getting used to playing and you get to a certain level, you can see the G, the D, the C, and play those chords. But if you're the producer and you're writing these charts and that's what you want to hear, 2 things can happen. You can hire the guy you know that's going to have that sensibility, or you can hire anybody and make sure you just chart it right. And you know, a good chart is good communication, and I'm all for communicating in music. It's one of the reasons, again, where I talk about I can't stand modes, because I think it muddies that. Anyway, I figure that's a pretty good lesson for today, and very good.
How's that for a topper?
You're right on target.
You're right on the money. Everything you said.
You hit the nail right on the head with your comments, what you're saying today.
You're 150% correct.